Good evening. On behalf of the Prince Walid bin Talal bin Abdulaziz Saud Center for American Study and Research, I am honored today to present Professor Tariq Ramadan. I have known him and his writing for a long time, since I was a PhD student in France. Without a doubt, he is one of the most influential voices of young Muslim scholars in Western society. He is active at both academic and grassroots levels, lecturing extensively throughout the world on social justice and dialogue between civilization, contributing into the debate on issue of Muslims in the West and the Islamic revival in the Muslim world. Debates in Europe, and especially in France, with him and about him are often hostile to the idea that a person can come from a religious background and still be a philosopher or a social scientist. It is often difficult for French laicism, which becomes religions against all religions, to accept that. I think him remind me Ernest Troeltsch, a theologist and sociologist German, who wrote in the end of 19th century a very outstanding book on Protestantism and modernity, and this book has translated into French only in 1996 after other 9 languages. So I think this deep mistrust of French laicism of anyone like Dr. Ramadan. Often his opponent don't have, for me, any serious criticism in the content of his thought, but they charge him of saying different things to different audience. One thinks to radical and young Muslims, and other to the Western media and academia. I disagree with that, and I can argue with him on many things, but not this double standards. Professor Ramadan is a professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Oxford, Faculty of Theology, and Senior Research Fellow at St. Anthony College, also Oxford, and the Heisha University in Kyoto, Japan. He is also visiting professor holding the chair, Identity and Citizenship, at Erasmus University in the Switzerland. He is also president of a think tank called European Muslim Network in Brussels. He wrote many books. The last one is Radical Reform, Islamic Ethics and Liberation in 2009. In the Footsteps of the Prophet, Lesson from the Life of Muhammad, 2007, Western Muslims and the Future of Islam, 2004, Islam, the West and the Challenge of Modernity, 2001, To Be a European Muslim, 1999. Today he will deliver some thought on the US, Islam, and the relationship with the Muslim majority countries. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ramadan.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation here and this introduction, mainly about some of the troubles that I may have in the French European settings. Yes, It's okay. Things are difficult and not always easy in Europe, while you know, by inviting me here, that I'm still banned from the United States of America, and that just today the ACLU is releasing a call for the new administration to change this and to stop banning people on the basis of political views, because mainly it's this that is happening now there. And part of what I'm going to say as well is that the perception around what is happening now in the relationship between the United States of America and the Muslim majority countries, Islam and the Muslim majority countries has deteriorated during the last 10 years in a way which is quite critical, very critical. So what I'm going to say here, it's a critical assessment of what is happening. But I want to make it clear from the very beginning that as I'm quite critical towards what is called the West, the US or the European policies towards the Muslim majority countries, you would see in all what I am writing that I'm quite critical and very critical with the Muslim majority countries, the governments, the civil society, and our own responsibility. I think that if you come to what is the Muslim majority country or what is happening within these societies, it's quite clear that we cannot just go on blaming the other for what is happening within, while I think we also have to be critical about the role of the intellectuals, the politics, from within corruption, dictatorships. All this is part of my criticism towards what is happening in the Muslim majority countries. So I'm not forgetting this. I'm not going beyond that. So my topic today, it's US, Islam, and the Muslim majority countries. So I'm focusing on this relationship, but I'm not forgetting this criticism. And recently I wrote a piece on that, which was not the first one. And then also I got very strong reactions from some Arabs and Muslims saying that I'm too harsh on that. But my critics are on both sides. Following, in fact, what happened, we were 3 weeks ago with the US Qatar forum in Qatar recently at Doha, and we had a discussion. Madeleine Albright was there, and Anwar Ibrahim as well was there. And he said something that I completely agree with him. He said, okay, now we are all waiting for Obama to do the job. And he said, no, not going to be that way. Is that the Muslim majority countries, and he was speaking about Malaysia, he was speaking about Indonesia, the Arab countries, the Muslim majority countries as a whole, saying, no, the point is we have to change. We have a great deal of responsibility in the whole process, and it's not going to come from there. So we will have the Obama we deserve. And this is, I think, quite important as well. Also from a European point of view, because we also have to say exactly the same with the European policies there. So let me start with saying that this critical assessment and the introduction of my talk is really 3 main points. The first one is about this US relationship with Muslim majority countries, and you cannot avoid as a first step to stop and to assess the relationship and the perception that you have in the US discourse about Islam as a whole. Because if you speak about the Muslim majority countries, you also have to deal with this perception. And what happened during the last 10 years with the Bush administration has something to do with Islam as a specific area. It's not only about politics, it's about a civilization, it's about the religion, it's about also, so this perception is quite strong here in the Muslim majority countries as well as in the West. So this is something which is important, this assessment of this situation and all the discourses and the actions that we have to assess on that field. The second dimension is to say that during the last 8 years, if you assess what happened under the Bush administration from September 11th through all the way through what happened recently with the Gaza crisis. You may call it a war, I don't call it a war. I don't see a war in that. I'm quite strong I see something which is much more than, okay, I'm not going to, I will come back to this, but I'm just, it's quite difficult to bear with what happened there, and also the silence coming from the current administration. Just before Obama came into power, and that what happened afterward, and what we heard today was Netanyahu having an alliance now with Lieberman, which is not opening channels for hope for all of us. But Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine, and all this crisis and all this wars for some of them deepened the perception that the relationship between the United States of America and the Muslim majority countries is, as I said, deteriorating, but in a way which is quite critical, and I will come to this. So when it comes to assess from where we are, me as a European, but also dealing and visiting where I can some of the Muslim majority countries, because some of them are also banning the presence of the critical discourse from Egypt to Tunisia and other countries, what we have to assess is really these policies and this way of dealing with the Muslim majority countries is based on what? What are the intentions of the US administration, the Bush administration, and what we are seeing now and witnessing for the first weeks and months of the Obama administration? Are we talking about a dialogue based on values, when during his speech as an elected president, President Obama said something which was to do, we are open now for a dialogue with Islam and the Muslim world. On which base? Is it a debate on values that we are sharing? Is it something which has to do with, once again, only security measures? Because this is what we are talking about, we have been talking about during the last years, security. And in the name of security and this war on terror, many things that are done which are against the American values and our common values. When we know today, and this has been released yesterday by the New York Review of Book, the report of the Red Cross about tortures. So it's just incredible, unbelievable that you can see that this is now known, it is said, and it happened. It happened in the name of security measures. It happened in the name of this war on terror, that we are opening a dialogue on democracy and democratization while we are inconsistent with our own values. So what does it mean exactly? So which kind of dialogue? And then is it, because it's the case, something which has to do with the old, new policy protecting the American interest wherever the United States of America have to do that, from the Middle East to Asia to what is happening also in Europe. So I think that the three main points here is really to ask ourselves, this relationship with Islam as a civilization and religion, we have to assess that, which kind of discourse. And it's also important because you cannot now understand that, you cannot avoid thinking that the relationship between the US administration or the United States of America with Islam and Muslims, it's important not only with the Muslim majority country, but the relationship between the governments and the American Muslims and the European Muslims will have a tremendous impact on the relationship with the Muslim majority countries. This is quite clear. You have millions of dollars that are spent now, paid by many transnational corporations, by the government, to study what is happening in the West with the Muslim presence. Why? Because this is a political force. This is a political presence. This will have an impact on anything which has to do. And so when you have reports speaking about Arabia, that Europe is becoming very Islamized and very much pro-Arab in this way, which in fact is changing as well, because the President Sarkozy is very much now supporting and changing his direction towards the United States of America, and this is perceived quite clearly. So I think that here, all this relationship, the first point, is quite important, and then also to look at the last 8 years and what can we hope out of this, in which way we have to be assessing the situation, in which way we may also put or ask ourselves, are there conditions to change this situation, and channels where we have to look in order to change this situation. So let me start with the first point, which is we are sitting here. You are in Beirut. You are studying here. We all say there is no clash of civilization. We don't speak about this. This is something which is, oh, you have Edward Said say, no, it's not a clash of civilization. It's a clash of ignorance. And then you travel around during the last 8 years. I'm sorry to tell you, if you look at the minds and the perceptions, there is something which is a clash of perceptions. So here, I was talking to the taxi driver. He's speaking about them. And them is the West. Them is the other. And then you are dealing with Westerners, and you also have this perception that them are the Muslims, even within the society. So this perception coming from this rhetoric that we have had during the last 8 years, it may be not something which is based only on, it's not a clash of civilization, so to say, because we have to go deeper than that, but we cannot avoid talking about a clash of perception, and that this us versus them is everywhere. So this discourse on Islam now is something which is a rhetoric, and it has succeeded in the West. It has also succeeded in the States. So this perception here. And when you deal with some of the leaders, the Muslim in the States, you also have this feeling that this is not solved, and we have really to tackle this issue. And then the perception of the new enemy of today, once again, it could appear as being simplifying the situation, but many things that were said about the other, about the communism, about this policy towards the other is said now, and it's perceived with the new enemy in Islam. If you now also speak about this, the new enemy that is either real or suspected. So our perception now in this criticism it's also based on that. Which kind of criticisms are coming from the Muslim world, in which way we are building this relationship with the Muslims within our societies in the West, but also with Muslim majority countries, and in which way we are dealing with everything which has to do with migration, everything which has to do with visa, everything which has to do with the perception in the Muslim majority countries is really that there is a problem now with being a Muslims. Remember that even the election, and think about this, because it has an impact on anything which has to do with the relationship with Muslim majority countries. Colin Powell came and supported Barack Hussein Obama. He supported him. And at one point he was asked about the fact that, is he a Muslim? And he asked the right question. Is there a problem in this country in being a Muslim? So the perception is here is that there is something even in the government, is all the rhetoric. And I don't think that the only new discourse coming from Barack Obama saying that we are open for dialogue is going to change this. There is something which has to be solved in the whole discussion here. What are we talking about, and in which way we are dealing with the Muslim majority countries, the Muslim presence in the West, and Islam as a civilization and as a religion. So this discourse that there is something intrinsically opposed in Islam to Western values is something which was coming from the neocon rhetoric, but we are not solving the problem. And in the relationship with the Muslim majority countries, this is something which is quite important when we come with, we want more democracy. All the rhetoric which was before the invasion of Iraq was all about, okay, we want to get rid of this tyrant and we want democracy because he has weapon of mass destruction. Weapon of mass destruction, this was a lie. And democracy, it was a lie as well. So it was not for that. It was mainly for geostrategic interests. And we know now how it's bad and the situation is bad. And I think that on that, once again, the overall discussion, and if there is something which could be very important, something that we can expect from an American institution based in a Muslim majority country is to reassess this discourse, is to produce a discourse which is completely different on that. If there is something which is useful from here, is also a discourse directed there to change this image, to change the reality of it. And I think that, I'm sorry, very often we are students, professors dealing with our world, and we are not connected to the world, not enough. So we were talking about my involvement at Rotterdam University in the Netherlands. And it's a project, university within the city and city within the university is really to have a channel of communication. So an American institution, and the way it's also supported by Ibn Talal, all this is quite important. But it has to do with a new discourse coming from an American institution on Islam for the Americans, because they need it. They need it. You know, they are in dire need of a new discourse on Islam and the values of Islam and the dynamics. The second point, which is quite important here when it comes to this war on terror and to look at so the discourse here, it's important. And I can tell you, you were speaking about mistrust, but there is a great deal of mistrust, mistrust is essential here in this relationship. Do you mean it? Do you mean that you are for democratization? What should a Muslim in a Muslim majority country show and prove to show that he or she is very much promoting democracy, transparency, and being against corruption? What should we be the proof? And I think that this is something which is related to something which is behind the discussion, beyond the discussion. It's in fact everywhere in the discussion, but it's not uttered, it's not said. It's implicitly there that there is a problem in this relationship. And I think really the rhetoric that was produced for 8 years from this Bush administration is everywhere. And when you come now in Europe, you can see exactly the same deep mistrust about this relationship. And it has nothing to do with direct politics, but it has an influence on direct politics, on real politics, on daily politics. Now, if you look at the consequences of this, in the Muslim majority countries and when you travel around, we need to deal with memory, and we need to deal with history. This retaliation against Afghanistan, to make it clear, I started to criticize what happened in Afghanistan in the 90s, much before 2001, and I wrote a book, To Be European Muslim. At the end of the book, had a series of questions coming from a French journalist and a British journalist as well. I responded to this. I was very critical to the bin Laden. I was saying at that time, I don't know who is this guy. I don't know who he is. But I think that the way he is acting is problematic, and it may be that in the future he will be an objective ally of the states. This was in the beginning of the 90s. So he was involved there. And we know that he was involved and that there were relationships between the states and bin Laden. We know also what happened with the Taliban. We should have this memory, because this use of Islam and political Islam and the naive, sincere Muslims when it comes to being involved in a very literalist way, as the Taliban were. The Taliban at the beginning were sincere believer literalists. I was against this reading, but they were very naive in politics. So when you are naive in politics and sincere in religions, you are very dangerous. The most dangerous people are sincere in religion, naive in politics, because they can be used by not so sincere in politics and completely hypocrites in religion. And this is what happened. And this is what happened. So after coming to this situation and telling us that the retaliation against the Afghani civil society, because at the end of the day, it was a war against Afghanistan, and what happened now, we know that it's not going to be solved by this war. All the reports are saying it's impossible. You can't go out of this only through a war. Something should happen. We need a new strategy. But okay, we need a new strategy now, but for the last 8 years, even 10 years, what we had there is something which was a very negative message on the relationship between what the United States are doing and the way some groups and trends are used. So we have to remember this, because some of the more literalists, some of the more dogmatic minds within the Muslim world could be used by the Bush administration or the American administration in a way, and then after that becoming the new enemies. Memory is important, because even the people there in Afghanistan, and I met some of them who came, you know, Masoud, when he came in Europe, before he was killed, he came in Europe to advise the Europeans to be very careful with the relationship between Pakistan and the States. He came to tell the Europeans, be careful. There is something which is not right in this relationship. And to tell you the truth, up to now, there is something which is completely not right in the relationship between the States and the Pakistani disorder. Not to say the political system, because it's full of corruption, it's a dark hole. It's a dark hole, but the relationship, it's quite so. And then he became the new hero for the US administration. He was everywhere, while he was the first enemy before. And himself, he was against this American policy in the region. I think that we have to be critical here, not to lose this memory, because this is helping us to assess the situation. And this is sending a message also, that if this is to continue to be like this, it's not going to change. If this is not going to change, the relationship is going to deteriorate much more and to be much worse in the future. So this was in the 90s, and I'm sorry when the people are now shouting and being very upset with what is happening in Iraq, because this was an invasion, it was based on lies. I don't know how come we can just be silent when we are told that the Afghani people had to pay for the terrorist attacks in New York. They were under the Taliban. They didn't choose the Taliban. The Afghani were not supporting all, and then they were killed, and innocent people were killed. So this also has to be assessed. Why? Why this policy? And by the way, we know now also that this attack on Afghanistan was decided before September the 11th. So the new report that we have, this was said in April, May, and June 2001, so before. So this was then instrumentalized. On this, you cannot be but critical, saying, what is this? How do you want the relationship between the United States and the Muslim world to be good if this is happening? And then add to this Iraq, the lies and the whole failure there. But more than that, something that we have now also to be very cautious, because it's a very important point. And it will be a tremendous, it will have a tremendous impact in the future, is the way the United States are now creating or dealing with the relationship between the Shia and the Sunni. So once again, here we cannot blame the states to use these divisions, because the Muslims here, you know, when during the crisis in summer 2006, you have a fatwa coming from Riyadh saying that you cannot support the Lebanese resistance because they were Shia. You have to ask yourself, what is this mess? What are you talking about? What is this? So you cannot blame the Americans, because we were told the Americans pushed the Saudi to say that. It may be possible. The problem is then it was the Saudi. It's not only with the Americans. If you have Saudi being able to say a fatwa saying that the Shia are not real Muslims, so we cannot support the resistance, I think that we have to ask to be critical here with what is happening. So you may be weak, and the strength of the other in a state of war is to use your weakness. So you have to be critical with your weaknesses. That's fine. But at the same time, you also have to ask yourself, it's not going to work to create a division in the Islamic world when it comes to creating a division between the Sunni and the Shia could be contextually successful. On the long run, is not going to work. And on one crisis, it will never work, never. It's with Palestine. With Palestine, you will not use this. It's not possible to use that. So this will be something which is going to be, you may on the periphery of some crisis, but at the center of the crisis, Palestine and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will not be we cannot use this, division here. And I think that it's not clear on that which kind of policies we have coming from the United States of America on that, and we have to be critical. The third one, and the third example, because I have 45 minutes, I don't have time, but I'm highlighting some of the main crises that we were assessing during the last 8 years. I think that the last one in Gaza is something which is sending a message to the Muslim majority countries, which is the worst that you can get. And mind you, there is something which is quite important. The public opinion is not following the government in all the countries. So it may be that, of course, in the countrysides and far from the cities, you may find Americans completely supporting the American policy. But this, and let me tell you something. In 2004, in 2003, and then in 2004, when I was in the American embassy, and my visa has been revoked, I got the visa, I was to go, all my furniture, everything was already in the States, I was to go. Everything was fine, I was to go and to stay. Definitely, it was a double tenure position at Notre Dame University. My visa has been revoked 9 days before going, with no explanation. I waited for 2 years to hear something which is completely ridiculous, that I gave 700, and look at that, because it's quite important, 700 euros to a Palestinian organization supporting. And I myself told them when I was there, I gave to such organizations. I'm giving money, yes, to Swiss organizations, Palestinian organizations, don't have a problem with that. And then I got 2 years with no explanation. I don't know why my visa has been revoked. 6 months before this revocation, I was in the State Department giving a lecture in the US administration. They all know who I was and what I was talking. And to be critical, I was always critical. I will continue to be critical because it's for the sake of the United States of America to be critical when they are wrong. And this last year, they have been wrong too many times on that field, on this relationship. So the point was that I got an answer which is, you gave the money to an organization, and this organization is on the blacklist, allegedly supporting Hamas. This organization is not blacklisted in Europe, so it was impossible for me to know, because I am a European, not an American. I didn't know, and I don't have the list in my room, all the organizations that are blacklisted there. And more than that, I gave the money between 98 and 2002, and this organization was blacklisted in 2003. And I got a letter telling me you should have known. So I should have known 1 year before you that this organization would be. Funny, the judge was laughing as you are laughing. He said, it's impossible for him to know. But then he came after 1 month saying, yes, but the State Department and the Homeland Security did not work against the Constitution because this procedure is retroactive. So at the time I did it, it was impossible for me to know, but retroactively, I cannot come. Okay, the point is, for me, why I'm saying this, is that in fact, I went twice in the American embassy in Switzerland. 85% of the questions were on Iraq and on Palestine. What is your take on this? I'm critical. I said, and I repeated, and I repeat here, that the war in Iraq was a mistake. It was against the international law, and we have to be critical. And the resistance, I may disagree with the means. I say it, no way to kill innocent people. We can't kill civilians, wherever we are, however is the situation. No civilians. But the resistance to a wrong invasion is legitimate, and the Palestinian resistance is legitimate. So I always said that, and I was critical towards the American policy by saying, your unilateral support to Israel is a mistake. It's not helping the peace process. You are acting against the interest of peace with your policy there. So the point for me is to understand this, that in Palestine and what we got now, with the silence, for example, of Obama when he was elected president, he said nothing about what happened, say there is only one president. That's fine. That's true. And the silence afterward, and what we got out of this massacre, out of this killing innocent people, and the wrong facts that were spread around about this situation, I think that on this, it's quite clear that it's the center. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is the center. And as long as we have this positioning coming from the United States of America, it was not as bad as this, or maybe it was more subtle. Because, you know, Madeleine Albright, when she was at Qatar, she was attacking and saying this war in Iraq was wrong, because she was against it. And that's good to hear someone say. But don't forget that before this, for 10 years, she was supported the boycott and the blockade of the Iraqi people. We killed 500,000 people there. Okay, that's fine. No war, but boycott, blockade. So we also have to be critical with the subtle way to be against the interest and to be against human dignity and human rights here, because it has to do with human rights. When you are killing people with decision of such a tough and very huge impact, you also have to, it's not media covered, but it's killing. So the point for me here is to say that what we had now in Palestine is the center of our discussion. And the unilateral support, and we'll see now what is going to happen with Netanyahu having as a foreign minister Lieberman, it's just a catastrophe for anything. So now you have a democratic process, while when you had the democratic process in Palestine, it was not accepted as a democratic process. The Palestinians were wrong. They voted the wrong way. And I will come to this, because this is a point also that we have to discuss. So having said this, in our discussion here, am I on my, how long do I have now? I still have 10 minutes. Be careful, I'm still an Egyptian with time. So it could take 3 hours. So no, so we have to discuss this, and we have to discuss it critically. Once again, don't get me wrong. I'm saying and repeating that the first enemies are not supporting in the process of the Palestinians are the Arabs themselves. I'm critical. That's fine. But the US and this administration, and we'll see what is happening. I think that this is where the current president, his room for maneuver is maybe the narrow one. It's really there that he has no real room for maneuver. It is going to be very difficult. But still, it cannot continue like this, and we really have, and once again, from where you are in this institution, being here, this voice of reasonable process and reasonable discussion and openness to what is happening. You cannot call the people for transparency in the political field, and when they are voting, then you say, we don't talk to you. You can't do that. It's not reasonable. This means that you are blindly supporting one side and not the other. And I will come to this in my conclusion. So the third point that I wanted so the first is about the discourse on Islam, the first discourse on Islam, and I really think on this, we have to work. So once again, wherever we are, and anything that can have to do with Islamic studies, explaining, studying, teaching, this is important. Now on this war on terror, the way it's done, and the politics, and the real politics and the impacts and the wars that we have are part of the whole process in this relationship with the Muslim majority countries. And then I come to the trends, the third dimension, the third point that I wanted to make. Look, for the last maybe 10 years, I'm coming from the reformist tradition. I'm the grandson of Hassan al-Banna. All the people are saying this, and they are repeating and repeating this. And I'm not apologizing for being the grandson of Hassan al-Banna. Hassan al-Banna is my grandfather. Okay, that's okay? The point is that he's my grandfather. Now, as to his ideas, the context, the way he was, I'm putting things into context. He was living in the 30s and the 40s. I'm trying to understand. With some things, I agree. With other things, I disagree. I'm not in the same context. I'm not living the same life. But the point is that his spiritual journey, his resistance to colonization, his teaching of creating 2,000 schools. I support that. And anyone who's telling me I don't support that, I say, I'm sorry, I'm supporting that. This was the right way to resist British colonization, and I will support that. Now, hierarchy, the kind of organization, the way, I may be critical, and I'm critical, and I wrote on that. This is not the point. The point is, we are, and I'm facing, and have been facing during the last 10 years, people saying, we are looking for moderate Muslims. So, who are the moderate Muslims? So even in the West now, the moderate Muslims, the one that I was presented as moderate Muslims in the United States of America recently, are people who are saying about themselves, I'm an ex-Muslim. So the moderate Muslims are ex-Muslims, like Ayaan Ishali. That's fine. You are telling me that you are not a Muslim, and you are presented as the right moderate voice of Islam. This is in the West. Now come to the Muslim majority country and ask yourself, who are the moderate Muslims that you are talking about? Who are the, and then you are dealing with the Muslim world in the political field with something which is, it's not about your attitude with Islam and your political views, it's your attitude towards the US policy that are making you a moderate or not. Because you can be a Saudi traditionalist Salafi saying, I'm not involved in politics. And you always have to tell them, you know, not to do politics is to do politics. No politics is politics. If you don't understand that, you are starting to be, this is the point where they can be dangerous. Very sincere and very naive. So who are the moderate? When they are telling you, no democracy because Islam has no problem. We don't vote. Intikhabat is not in the Quran. Intikhabat, elections, is not in the Quran. So democracy, not in the Quran. We may shura, but shura, the way we are putting it. So when you look at this discourse and we come to politics, who are you talking about? What are the people you are talking about? Who are these moderate Muslims in the Muslim majority countries? Because at one point, I may disagree with trends, but when you have people supporting the democratic process and being pragmatic, you may now disagree with Hamas, but no one of you can say now that during the last 10 years, they have not shown pragmatism in the way they are dealing with rules. When Sheikh Yassin was killed, he was calling for a truce and he was calling for mutual recognition for a time. He was killed at that time. These were, and you know, when you have a deported Jewish previous French ambassador in Israel saying this, saying you, to the Israeli government, you don't want peace because you are killing the people who at one point were saying we are ready for a truce. So what is the point? What are you talking about? What do you want exactly? And when you have on the other side the United States of America being silent, so are they supporting truce or are they supporting unilaterally the state of Israel? When you have Sharon saying, we are not afraid of the political decision in the states because we are controlling them. And he said like this, we are controlling. Silence. I think that we have to be critical. And we have to be critical on the point is, who in the Muslim majority countries are the moderate Muslims, the Muslims that you are ready to talk to, and don't tell us that it's about being moderate or Salafi or conservative. You don't have a problem with conservative as long as they support your interests. So you protect our oil interest, we accept. You are critical, but don't you remember this kind of mindset? This kind of mindset is the mindset of the colonizers. You are good when you are with me, and you are bad when you are against me. Whatever is with your position. So whatever is your reading of Islam, I'm becoming, coming from the reformist tradition, to be a bad one, because I'm critical towards the American policy. So the bad dimension is not about my reading of Islam, it's not about the way I'm a Muslim, it's about the way I'm critical. And I'm sorry, all the Democrats in the Muslim majority countries are against the American policy towards the Muslim majority countries. All the Democrats are critical. So are they on the bad side, on the wrong side of the hands? I think that this is where we have to come with this. when it comes to, I cannot enter Saudi Arabia. Okay, I'm critical. I'm saying that the way that they are dealing with Islam is betraying the very meaning of the Islamic teaching. So when I am in interfaith dialogue, I'm a moderate. When I enter the realm of politics, I'm a radical. And when I want to enter the states, I'm banned. Thank you. Understand the logic of that. It means what? It means that the relationship is all about interest, protecting the interest, geostrategic interest, economic interest, and part of the interest is Israel. Israel is within this. So I think that here, if we want to be serious in this discussion, we cannot avoid it. We have to be head on. We have to just to talk about this and to ask ourselves, now, what is and what is your position, what is my position on political Islam? Is political Islam a monolithic reality? It's not. Political Islam is as diverse as Islam itself. You have trends that are legalist, Democrats, and others who are radical, and they are dogmatic, of course. And some are in a situation of political resistance, and others are in a process of trying to free the country from dictatorship. You may agree or not, but at one point you cannot just demonize the whole groups and say they are all the same. You have to talk to the people who have credentials, who are being elected. So I don't see any future if we continue to talk behind the scene with people from Hamas and we deny the fact that we are doing it. While we all know that this is done. We all know that they are talking to each other. So what is this hypocrisy? It's done. With here, you have Hezbollah in this country. You may agree or not, but they are here and they are a political force in this country. You cannot avoid talking to the people who have credential, who have popularity, and have people. You have to talk. So if now it's all, they are all terrorists, you cannot play with words like that. It's not possible. Have to be serious about this. So if we want to improve the relationship, to talk doesn't mean that you agree. To talk is you acknowledge the complex dynamics within a society where the people are trying to find what? A process of democratization. Because at the end of the day, if you are serious about democratization, you have to deal with extreme views. We are dealing, I am in Europe, you are in the States. I'm sorry, the neocon were for me coming from an extreme view within the society. I'm dealing with far-right parties. They are dealing with, I'm saying we have to talk to them. Recently, I was in Switzerland talking to someone from the far-right party, talking to him because he wants to ban the mirrors, because this is the symbol of the Muslim arrogance in Switzerland. We have to talk. So if we have to talk with the extreme views and political views in our society, because this is all about democracy, are we going to avoid talking with people who may not be, in fact, so extreme on political views, and they may be more Democrats than the dictators that we are talking with? So to support dictators because they are protecting our interests, and to refuse to talk to democratic trends because they are too much critical or promoting a kind of Islamization, it's not consistent, it's not reasonable, it cannot continue. And I think that in that, once again, we may agree or not with their views, but you have to talk to them. And all this business about the Sunni and the Shia, it's not the future. So my last point here, it's my conclusion, is that if I have to assess what happened during the last years, is really this discourse and this rhetoric is really damaging. And it's really much more about protecting geostrategic and economic interests. And as I said, Israel is one of them. My hope on this is from where we are within academia, within the Muslim majority countries, from where we are talking and being able to reach and to be heard by the US administration, is to be serious about something which is something that I've been saying for 20 years, process of democratization. And this means that we really have to be on the side of all the people, whatever is their views on democratization. Meaning what? Against corruption, for more transparency and trusting the civil society. These are points that we need to promote within the Muslim majority countries as well. And this is not against Islam. This is not against Islam, and this is consistent with our common values. So let us be honest on this without hypocrisy. So this is why we have to come together and to promote that. It means all the means that are promoting this democratization process are important to promote. To talk to the leaders of political Islam, as long as they are not advocating, of course, pure violent extremists killing innocent people. These are not in the political process, in fact. If you listen to what is said by people when we have tapes coming from bin Laden or tapes coming from Ayman al-Zawahiri, they are not in the political process. In fact, they are on the margin of all the Muslim communities and involved in the political process. They are speaking from outside. They are not on the process. Now you have people within the process criticizing them. This is saying they are undermining all what we have been doing for years. They are undermining it. We are the second victims of their discourse. The first victims are the people who are killed. The second is us. Because what they are doing is undermining the whole process. Within the process, you have discourses relying on an understanding that Islam has to do with politics, but they are involved in a process, and you have to listen to this. You have to listen to this, and you cannot be silent on this. And when Chavez is asking for being elected for life, it's a scandal. I'm sorry. I'm coming from a country, my president is elected for life, and maybe his son after him. They are democratically elected for life. This is the reality. And I cannot enter Egypt as well. So, with all these groups, and I think that for all of us on the political field, and this is why I'm talking to us as intellectuals, professors, students living in the civil society, there is a great, really deep need for more consistency in our discourse. And once again, not to be driven by emotions here, but to be driven by reasonable politics, to say who are the people we have to involve with and in which way we can improve these relationships between the United States of America and the Muslim majority country. So you have a great deal of responsibility where you are in Beirut. We have a great deal of responsibility where we are in the West, in Europe and in the States. And in the Muslim majority countries, it's high time also to have some more vocal and radical voices asking for this consistency and being able to face and to be critical towards the governments, the dictators, the dictatorships, the lack of transparency, corruption. And once again, I think that Anwar Ibrahim on that was right. Don't wait for Obama to be a magician. Just try yourself to be an active, committed promoter of democratic process with all the consequences. You may like it or not, but at the end, it's not you who decide what is good for the people, and it's not because they are not voting the way you like that you have to change the people. Thank you.